2 Corinthians 5:14-17. For the love of Christ controls us, because we have concluded this, that one has died for all, therefore all have died. And he died for all, that those who live might no longer live for themselves, but for him who for their sake died and was raised. From now on, therefore, we regard no one according to the flesh, even though we once regarded Christ according to the flesh. We regard him thus no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come.
Hello, friends, my brothers and sisters in recovery. I am Pastor Michael. This is
William Barber.
We're with the Mosaic Recovery Community Ministry. We're here to talk recovery, so let's talk recovery. Now, before we get started, I would just like to take some time to recognize one of our brothers who died recently. His name is Charles Johnson. He was alumni of Mariners Inn.
Yes, he was.
He was alumni of Mariners Inn, a great brother. He worked in the kitchen there. And we just want to take some time to recognize him. And we'll have a moment of silence for Charles, and we'll follow it with the we version of the Serenity Prayer. A moment of silence for our brother Charles and for all of the others who have lost their lives to this horrible disease of addiction. A moment of silence followed by the we version of the Serenity Prayer. Who has all power? God, grant us the serenity to accept the things that cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference just for today. So we're going to, last week we were talking about why are we here? And we were coming from the Blue Book. And many of you already know, right, why are we here? We're here because we're addicts seeking recovery. But even more than that, you know, as we discussed last week, we're here because God has a plan for us. And I have my brother, Will, here with me. And he and I have been on this journey for a long time, So just tell the people some encouraging words about why you're here and how you've managed to get to where you are during your process of recovery.
Well, I'm here basically because I wanted to change my life. My life was in total disarray. You know, the concept spiritually bankrupt.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That was in play. And while I was out there, I always felt like I was fighting a spiritual warfare, a spiritual battle. Again, like I said, I was spiritually bankrupt, and I wanted to change that. I mean, I knew the entire time that I was out there that there was something always better and greater for me. But just getting to that point was just the hardest part, you know, because it's like, what's the beginning? Where am I going to start this?
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you got the drug addiction and everything else that's weighing heavy on you. So it wasn't until I hit, quote unquote, rock bottom that I decided to do something about the problem. Going into treatment led me to the church. And for me, that was kind of, you know, mingling the two.
Yeah.
Is what I actually needed. And because I always wondered, you know, where am I going to go to church at? I know it's going to come at some point.
Right.
Where was it going to be, and when was it going to be, and how was it going to be? And going into Mariners, and you guys just, lo and behold, just coming to start picking us up. And I came to this place, and from day one of being here, I was just like, okay, this is where I'm going to be at. And this is where I'm at. This is like 2.5 years later. So it's God-given, you know.
Yeah,
definitely.
and I just want to touch on that a little bit because I remember when you came, what was it, about 2 years ago?
It was November of 2019.
November of 2019, and I remember meeting you in that space, and I remember when you opened your heart to this relationship with Christ and made him the center of your recovery, right? But even in that, right, there's challenges. You know, we face these challenges. We think, and I've thought this, right? We think that, okay, now I'm entering into this relationship with Christ, and now everything is poof, going to go away, right? But see, the thing is, what we must understand is we're here because it's more than just drugs and alcohol, right? There's things beneath the surface that we need to address and that we need to work on. And the only way that we can work on them is when we continue to stay in these rooms of recovery and when we continue to lean into this relationship. And also when we don't forget while we're here. Because, I know, right? I know sometimes we forget while we're here. We start getting some things. We get the job. We start getting some money. And you're a very talented brother. You know what I'm saying? You're very smart. You have a big personality. And getting a job, those type of things are no problem for you.
No.
And so what would you say is the biggest challenge that you would face as you continue to this time around? What was the biggest challenge you faced, and how you overcame that challenge?
Remaining humble, firstly, and something that I was taught here about aligning my purpose with God, and that's the biggest struggle now, as opposed to the drugs and the alcohol. How you say that that was the problem. It's no longer the problem. It's just keeping my focus on what's right and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest hurdle that I have to face on a daily basis. Is my behavior correct? Am I doing the right things for the right reasons? And that's the biggest challenge that I have every day. Getting up. I've recently started getting up and reading the Bible every day. That was something I never did, really. And now my worry is, am I reading it with purpose?
Right.
Is there a certain intent on what I'm reading? Because it's all new to me, and I'm like, where do I start? And what do I do? But I've taken it upon myself to get up every morning and just read. And like what Reggie would normally say, practice.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? So I'm practicing and I'm practicing, and it's getting a little bit easier. So that's like the first thing I do when I get up every day. Normally I would get up and I'm smoking a cigarette and I'm cutting on the TV, but this is the first thing that I do every morning.
Yeah.
And I've been doing it for 3 months now. And it all came about being at that table on Mondays and Carmen giving me that devotional.
Yeah.
So I started with that and I exhausted that. And I'm like, okay, I'm out of that now. So what am I going to read in the morning?
Right.
Well, let me go ahead and start, because I guess for me, reading the Bible was somewhat scary.
Well, let me say this, because it's very important, and we want to welcome. Come in, brother. We want to welcome our brother Reggie here.
Sorry for being
you all know Reggie, and yeah, we're just talking recovery. And so, why are we here, right? We're continuing with this talk about why are we here, and we want to grow closer to Christ, right? Because the more we grow closer to Christ, the more we become like Christ. Okay, so when we enter into the process of recovery, when we enter into the journey of recovery, right, that's the beginning. And there's a lot more that has to happen after that. So we enter into this journey, this process of recovery, and then our spiritual transformation is a ways out. But the more we lean into Christ, the more we're transformed on the inside, and what's happening on the inside begins to manifest itself on the outside. You know what I mean? So people think, okay, when I first come in, right, I'm supposed to have arrived. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were saying, well, people, they're doing this and they're doing that, and I'm saying, that's going to happen, right? Because we're all in a transforming process, or we're all in a refining process. So we're going to make mistakes, right? We're going to have issues with our attitude. We're going to have things that arise that we don't know how to handle. And what happens is, instead of pulling away when those things happen, we lean in more, right? We show up more. You know what I mean? The Bible says that if you draw nigh unto me, I'll draw nigh unto you. So what you're doing right now as you're drawing nigh unto God, right? If you're drawing nigh unto this relationship with Christ by reading your Bible in the morning, then he draws near to you. And then things begin to open up for you, right? Your eyes begin to open, and then you start seeing things from a spiritual vantage point. You know what I mean? And I think it's so very important that we understand this drawing nigh unto Christ. You know what I mean? And we do that in rooms like this. We do that in meetings like this. We do that by listening to messages like this. We do that by giving ourselves a break. I want to read this passage of scripture right quick, and then I just want you guys to just talk a little bit about what this passage means to you. Okay, I'm going to read from Psalms 107, verses 1 and 2. I'm going to read verse 1 and 3, 1 through 3 first, right? And so for me, I believe that this is the substratum, which is the foundation of the recovering addict, right? It says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord say this, those he redeemed from the hand of the foe, those he gathered from the lands from the east and west, from north and south." When you hear that, right, what does that mean to you when you hear that?
Transformation for me, and just being appreciative of it. Again, like I said before, where I came from and where I'm at, it's like night and day. And not until I came into these rooms did I properly understand that and begin to take a new appreciation for it and know that that's first and foremost. And I have been redeemed because where I was at and where I am now, it's total transformation. You know, and I'm also understanding that I'm not totally there. You know, I'm not where I want to be because I'm not satisfied with where I'm at.
Guess what? None of us are.
You know what I mean? I'm pleased where I'm at because I was, you know, when they said animalistic living, I was very low. But now I'm at a point where I know that everything's gonna be all right, and I haven't been worried about using drugs. You know what I mean? Because I just know that there's something much better for me. Those experiences that I faced taught me a great lesson, and I have to draw near to my higher power.
And so let me say this, and I'm gonna let you answer, Reggie. So let me say this. Will said that the thought of using and all of that hasn't even came up. But usually when we start using, that's the last piece of the puzzle, right? There's a bunch of other things that happens before we start using. And so when we say, why are we here? We're here because we want to put tools in our tool belt, right, in our toolbox, so that we can recognize when those things are happening, that's going to lead us to the ultimate death, and that is using again, right? So Reggie, when you hear this, I'll read it again. It says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good." Now, I normally like to read this from the King James Version because the King James Version really hits home with the meaning or the meat of what this passage is saying. But it says, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord say this, those he redeemed from the hand of the foe, those he gathered from the lands from the east and west, from north and south." When you hear that, what you say?
Well, I think about he's not expecting me to be perfect, but what he wants me to be is faithful and consistent. And his love is always going to be there, even at my worst. He loved me during the times of the madness, and all of the bold decisions, wrong decisions, all of those kind of things. And I'm learning that when I look, I put expectations and I look for that gratification from people, they will let me down. When I even put expectations on myself and I fall short, it hurts. But knowing that God has no expectation, he has an expectation for us to be faithful in the consistent part, but he knows that we're not going to be perfect. And when we put that in people, we tend to get hurt. Or when I put it in myself and when I fall short of the mark, I'm not there.
And so when I think of let the redeemed of the Lord say this, right? So think about redeemed. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I have this coupon, and this coupon is redeemable for this product or for this item. You know what I'm saying? And typically, that coupon was free to me. Okay? Okay, so now I'm in the hands of the enemy, right? And the Lord is redeeming me from the hands of the enemy, and it cost me nothing. It cost me nothing. Only thing I had to do was to surrender to the Lord, right? All I had to do was to say yes to him, and then I'm redeemed. I'm snatched, right? The King James Version says, "Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, those whom he have redeemed from the hand of the enemy, those whom he has snatched from the hands of the enemy." Like, he didn't just take me out of the hands of the enemy. He didn't just take you out of the hands of the enemy. He actually snatched us from the hands of the enemy. He said, "This is mine. You can't have this anymore." You know what I mean? So we're sitting in these seats, right, because the Lord has redeemed us from the hands of the enemy. He has snatched us from the hands of the enemy. And when we start thinking about who is my enemy, what is my enemy, right? Our enemy takes many different forms, many different shapes, right? But it's key for us to recognize our enemy, right? It's key for us to recognize our enemy, because only when we recognize our enemy can we stand against our enemy, right? And so I was telling somebody earlier today, right? Sometimes, and this is the butt nakedness of this, right? We present ourselves butt naked because that's the only way we can get clothed in God's righteousness. This is the butt naked of it. Sometimes I got to look in the mirror and recognize that I'm my own worst enemy.
That's right, that part.
You know what I mean? Like I'm my own worst enemy. I can stop blaming stuff on the devil because I did this. It was my choice to put myself in this situation, and now I got to deal with the consequences of that. And it says, those he gathered from the lands, from east and west, from north and south, right? And what that tells us is that we're all in this thing, right? That we're all in need of this relationship, right? That even though we come from all walks of life, right, the common denominator is that we have an enemy, and that Christ is the source of our victory from our enemy. Christ is the source of the redemption of our enemy. And so, right, we've been in a pandemic these last 2 years. It's been HE double hockey sticks, right? We all know, you're coming up on, you're past a year now, right? So Will is about ready to start leading. Be looking out for Will, because Will's going to be moving into a leadership position within our recovery ministry. But so we're coming through this pandemic, and we've seen a lot of people. We've seen a lot of people fall off. We've seen a lot of people die, you know. But you two brothers have been steadfast. And so I just want you to briefly share, how have you been able to remain? Because this is going to help somebody.
Amen.
This is going to help somebody, because right now somebody is saying, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. Somebody is saying right now, I can't take this no more. Somebody is at their wit's end. Somebody is the straw is about to break the camel's back. And what you say right now might be the thing that changed what happens to this person tomorrow. So I'm going to ask you this, and I want you to answer, you know, honestly, right? This is an honest program. How have you been able to maintain in your recovery throughout this pandemic?
For me, you know, you talk about a pandemic for the last 2 years, but we've been in an epidemic since the beginning of time.
Okay.
So you know what I'm saying? So I feel like this pandemic is only showing the world what people that know that they suffer from the disease of addiction go through on a daily basis. So it's really getting you in tune and in line. This pandemic, for me, it only got me closer to God. Like I told you, when I first went into that 19-day quarantine, it was like a retreat with God. It brought me, he said, through this test, there will be a greater testimony, long as I lean into him, long as I keep him first. And it allowed me to practice the things that I say all the time. Like I say, it takes daily practice. We turn our life and our will over to God with daily practice. So we have to do this. So that's, like Will said earlier, it's maintaining a practice of the spirituality. It's like being in a relationship. When I get into a relationship, you want to be with that person. You want to learn about them. You want to know their likes, their dislikes, what their favorite color and all that. It's the same way that I walk with God. I got to know what he likes, so I can understand and I can hear him when he really talks to me. So it's the daily practice part.
Daily practice. So leaning in. So you've managed.
When the times are bad.
When the times are bad.
When you get hurt, your feelings get hurt.
When your feelings get hurt. When you don't get it right. When you hurt somebody else's feelings.
You get
right?
rejected.
When you make mistakes. You know, all of that plays a part, right?
Broken.
Those are the times that we lean in even more.
Amen.
I want to tell this quick story that I want you to respond. So when I was being looked at for this assistant pastor role at Mosaic, right, I had a moral failure, right? Because I was still trying to figure it out, and and it was my struggle. You know what I mean?
Tell my story now. You can tell my
so
story.
I had a moral failure, right? And I remember when the pastor at the time, Pastor Mick, he was like, Michael, we're going to have to, because I was serving in ministry, and at that time I was sitting on our board of elders, and he said, I'm going to have to put you in a restoration period. And that restoration period was 6 months, and I had to see a counselor. I remember in that first period, it was like that fork in the road, because everything was screaming at me. See, I told you, right? You know, everything was reminding me of the scumbag that I was, and that, you know what I'm saying, see, you ain't for real about this. And I was at that fork in the road, and it was a choice that I had to make. Either I was gonna go and just continue doing my thing, or I was gonna lean in to Christ during that restoration period. And I decided that I was going to lean into Christ during that restoration period. That moral failure, and I'm saying this with all sincerity, that moral failure was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it brought me closer to Christ. Like just like when the addict in recovery relapse, right? Sometimes it could be, you know, a good thing. And I say that loosely, but sometimes it could be a good thing, because that relapse can be that thing that pushes us really into seeking this recovery and this relationship with Christ. And so we'll just talk a little bit briefly, help somebody that's watching. How are you able to maintain your recovery during this pandemic?
Well, it's real ironic that the last statements you just made, because I went through that. I went through success of getting clean and joining a church, being baptized, to having some time in recovery, to relapsing, and almost losing my life behind that. So that redirected my focus, and like you said, that could be the blessing in disguise. And that's exactly, you know, it was hard to go through, but in all actuality, in hindsight, that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because it made me work a little bit harder and lean in a little bit harder. And by me doing that, there are certain things that I didn't do last time that I'm doing now, like the behavior, just all types of things that I look at, things that I listen to. I mean, all of that type of thing has to change in order for you to stay on the right path. So by me going back and doing it all over again, and dealing with the shame and the guilt and everything else that comes along with it, I was able to come out a little bit better this time. So I know what to look for. So there are certain things that I might have done last time, because I felt like, okay, I got it. I know what to do now. No, I can't do those things. And I understand that, and by me having that understanding, there are certain things that I'm mindful of. So I approach days and recovery totally differently this time than I did last time. So it's been it hasn't been difficult. Not to be totally honest, it really hasn't been difficult, because I'm just doing the things that I should have been doing all along anyway. And simple program, and it's just being true to self, you know, as opposed to trying to be the man and look at in a certain manner. Just be yourself, and that's worked out for me. And just trying to be an honest and nice person, you know what I mean? That's going to go a long way, and that has afforded me a lot of freedom. I don't wake up disillusioned every day, no matter what happens. I know it's going to be all right. You know, like you mentioned the job. I got the job. All right, job's great. I'm making money. I was able to do a whole lot of things. Job's getting slow now. Money is not like it used to be.
Right.
But at the same time, I haven't fretted. You know what I mean? I'm just like, okay, it's going to work out. I know it's going to work out, because God hasn't brought me this far to just drop me. You know what I mean? As long as I'm doing the things that I need to do, and I know that are true and are correct, then I'm going to be all right. Man,
you know, the Blue Book talks about relapse a lot of times. It's a necessary thing that has to happen for you to finally get it. And Kirk Franklin has a song, Just For Me. And in that song it says, pain is a necessary ingredient for the change. You get enough pain, if there's enough pain in your life, things are going to start to change.
You know, Paul says, I forget the things of the past, right? And so you're just talking about that pain real briefly. Is so when you say I forget the things of the past, it's not that those things are obliterated from our memory. It's just that I choose not to be stuck in the past, right? I choose not to live in the past, right? And so I forget those things that may have me stuck, but I don't forget what God has brought me through.
No.
I don't forget when my face was bloody and I was laying on my mama's couch passed out, right? I don't forget the tears that was in my daughter's eyes, because that pain, right? That pain would have usually caused me to go back to using. Now it helps to spur me on in my recovery. You know what I mean? We don't live in the past. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes that pain that we feel, a lot of times that pain that we've experienced in the past helps to mold us to who we are today. And so I want to end on this note. Why are we here? We're here because we were in active addiction. We suffered from the disease of addiction, and we were in need of recovery. We stay here because we want to help the addict who is in need of recovery. Until next time.